Following the good news that the Para-Triathlon World Championships will be able to be staged after all this year, with the confirmation that November's WTCS Abu Dhabi will incorporate the racing on the first weekend of November, we hear from one of the USA's success stories at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games. Today on the World Triathlon podcast, we welcome the newly crowned men's PTVI Paralympic champion, Brad Snyder. Brad lost his eyesight in 2011 while serving in Afghanistan, and 12 months later was winning the first of his now 6 Paralympic golds to date at London 2012. After Rio 2016 came the switch to triathlon, hitting his first series start line in 2018. While the pandemic ensured that his build-up to Tokyo was far from ideal, the result was as good as it gets. So, Brad, welcome to the podcast. How are you and where are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be chatting with you today. I'm calling into you from Princeton, New Jersey on the East Coast of the US, where I shortly after getting back from the Tokyo Games, I started my second year as a PhD student here at Princeton University.
Right. Wow. So not a huge amount of time to soak it all in. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, yeah, maybe it's like having like late birthday presents. It delays the thing. And in a couple of months' time, when you do get some time off, everything will kind of wash back over you again, maybe.
I think so. Yeah. It's the gift that keeps on giving, I think, in that way.
So Saturday, the 28th of August, your alarm's gone off. It's the morning of your Paralympic para-triathlon, at least debut. Do you remember the first thoughts that went through your head that morning?
Yeah, I think when Greg Billington, my guide, and I were going to bed that night, we were kind of talking about how it felt sort of like Christmas morning. Like you mentioned in the introduction that the pandemic made the preparation less than ideal. And boy, is that like a statement we could unpack for quite some time. But after everything, after all of the drama and the preparation and the camps and all the other races, everything built up to that moment. And, I think there on one side, you might think like you'd wake up and be super nervous, but boy, we couldn't wait. I feel like we had done all the preparation that we wanted to do. You know the World Triathlon circuit as well as I do. Like you don't ever get like a full week of preparation on one course. And not only that, but we had a whole pre-camp, another week and a half, about 6 months worth of, well, actually 5 years of thinking about the Tokyo course, 6 months of knowing exactly turn for turn what that course is going to look like. Never had we been able to be that prepared for one race. Mm-hmm. So by the time that race morning comes, you just can't wait for the gun to go off and get going. And that's what made the program was a little frustrating for us anyway. We had to show up over at the venue we had to be to the buses by 4:30 to get to the venue by 5 to not race till 8:30. So sitting in the athletes lounge for 3 hours was in some form a torture, but we were really excited about when we'd get our chance to go.
Yeah. So that 3 hours, it was just building and building and building inside you as well then. Yeah. And just itching to get out there and do what you've been preparing for.
Yeah. The challenge I think was to kind of keep your energy low, do the warming up that you need to do, but keep your energy low. Don't burn any matches you don't need to and warm up. And also with the heat, it was already hot when we got there at 5 or so in the morning. And we know by 8:30, it's going to be about 15 degrees warmer, Fahrenheit anyway. So, trying to keep cool, try to keep that internal temp as low as possible, do your typical warm up, but also kind of keep your mental energy sort of as low as possible. That was kind of the challenge that morning.
Yeah. So what, and almost your preparation has obviously been very meticulous. So you got to kind of trust in that and presumably not start, you don't want to just start kind of chatting through the race again in that situation. Do you? Are you trying to talk about anything but, and then kind of get started again once you get to that start line, or?
Yeah, pretty much anything but. It was kind of nice that there was another race going on, so you can kind of let your mental gaze drift over to our teammates, Alyssa, Haley, Melissa, the gents, Jamie and Eric, kind of what's their race look like. We know it was kind of neat getting a race preview. So for example, we could hear, there was a peculiarity where the race buzzer was kind of like a double buzzer, which coming from the swimming background, that's actually the sound of a false start. So it was nice kind of having Andy Potts in the athlete lounge saying, hey, did you guys hear that like double buzz kind of thing? So it was, we were able to kind of think about the race in a maybe tangential way that was supportive to what we were trying to do, but not necessarily like you said, rehashing our race plan that we had been over 1,000 times. That said, one of the other challenges in that kind of that lead up is, I think what triathlon is really interesting, where you have this dichotomy of, you have the opportunity, especially on a course like Tokyo, to really pre-plan everything. You can pre-plan what getting off on the swim. You can count your strokes to the first buoy. You know exactly where all the turns are. You can game all of the turns on the bike course. You can know where you're going to hit your nutrition. You know where all the water zones are. But inevitably, every triathlete knows that something's going to come undone. Something's going to go wrong. Something's not going to be the way that you had planned it. So trying to, have all that pre-plan advantage, like the rigidity of a really nice organized plan, but the flexibility to know that something's going to come undone, and to not let that derail you. And for example, when our names were announced, Greg and I are walking down to the swimming platform. We had to walk through transition. Greg looks over and realized that one of the rubber bands to his shoes broke before we did anything. And there wasn't enough time to go over there and fix it. So he was basically just whispering to me on the way down to the swimming platform, like, hey, when we're going to go for the mount line, you're going to have to give me an extra second to flip my shoe so that we can get going. And it's a good thing he noticed it, because that would have been something that would have, in the moment when you're running out to the mount line, that would have been, not catastrophic, but something really unnerving, of the fact that his shoe was upside down. But it ended up being a non-factor because we were able to sort of have that, flexibility in mind on the lead up to the start of the race.
Mm. And so you would have in mind the stroke number to the first buoy within a certain amount, would you? I mean, even that, I guess, something as simple as losing count could be the thing that derailed you, right? Or was that
for sure
highly unlikely to happen?
Yeah, for sure. And so I do a lot of stroke counting. That's one of the ways that I got better at pool swimming blind, was really knowing my stroke count at all times, not only from a kind of a sense of where I am in the lane, but also from a pacing perspective. It's been really helpful to take into the open water, especially when you have long legs that are, 300 meters, 400 meters long. Sometimes it's really tempting, even in a short race like 750 meters, you can kind of get lost in your own pace and sort of, your body's inertia is to slow down. But counting strokes really helps me stay on top of what my pacing and where I want to be. But you're right, like, especially when your adrenaline's high, it's really easy to lose that count. And then you have no idea where you are. And then that starts to make you think, well, where am I? And where's the buoy? Is the buoy coming up soon? You don't want to have those thoughts. You kind of want to just execute the race plan. I've had races where that comes undone. And then I've had races where it goes really smoothly. And I'm really glad Tokyo was one of those races that just, all of those details came to fruition really nicely. I almost knew exactly where the buoy was going to be before we hit it. I was expecting the tap from Greg. We got through those turns really well. And I think, again, that was sort of a testament to the level and the amount of preparation we had done specifically for that course really came to fruition on race day.
And how different did it feel in that immediate build up then to London and to Rio, when it was, you were doing the swimming side of things? Did it kind of feel a bit like going back to that first Paralympics experience and feeling a bit green about everything, or?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that in some ways it felt like being right back in the village again. I think village life, being in a room with all the gents and going to the cafeteria and kind of going on the buses to and from the race venue, all of those sort of day-to-day logistics all felt like old hat. I know how to kind of get into an environment like that and kind of create my own space and stick to my own habits and build a framework where I can succeed, getting to bed on time and all that stuff. But to your point, the triathlon racing is just so fundamentally different. And the swimming program it's prelims finals over a stretch of 9 days. So it's completely different. Like, you're kind of on and off for a long period of time, whereas triathlon is building up to this very climactic 1 hour long race. And so the energy expenditure is different. The preparation's different. The timing was very different. What I found is, like, being a triathlete in the village is kind of a nice life hack, because we're doing things at times that no one else is doing things. We were up a lot earlier, I felt like. So the cafeteria was empty when we're going to get breakfast. And then because we were up earlier, we were back earlier than everybody else. The cafeteria was once again empty when we were going to have dinner at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Everybody else was much later. So it was kind of nice having that routine. And then I do think I liked, you have to be a lot more patient, because in swimming, kind of like day 2 or 3, you get one of your shots. You get to get into the finals pool and have one of your races under your belt, kind of build that confidence. You don't get that in triathlon. It's basically like however you feel on race day, that's how it's going to be. And you only get the one shot at it. But I do find that I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the buildup. I really enjoyed, as much as it was frustrating in the moment to sit there for 3 hours in the athletes lounge waiting for our turn, it made for a really cool experience, just waiting for the gun to go off. And once the gun goes off, man, like we smiled in the water, like we're finally going, and this is great. And to be able to kind of tackle a mental challenge like triathlon, where it's so chaotic, so many, like you said, the technology, bringing the bike to the game, bringing the nutrition into the game, bringing the tactics of the race to the game, really makes it very exciting and more, mentally challenging, not just from a how to manage your energy standpoint, but you have to be kind of engaged to the race, not only in the preparation and the lead up, but throughout the course. So this was, it kind of amounted to be a lot more fun than the previous 2 trips to the village.
And the course is obviously unique to each race. And you said you had 5 years to sort of think about that course. You didn't actually do the World Cup test event, did you, back in 2019?
I didn't.
Is a pool, and does that, or actually was your sort of London 2012 pool and Rio 2016 pool very different by virtue of the sounds and the echoes and the things like that? And if a pool is a pool, then does that make each new course that much more intimidating and or essential to get your head around and to picture in your head what it's going to be, as far in advance of that race as possible, and to know as much about it as possible in advance?
Yeah, another great question, and I think it's certainly more the latter than the former. I think a pool to a large extent is a pool. There's a really narrow temperature range from 78.0 to 78.5 degrees Fahrenheit that a competition pool is supposed to be held at. That's not I don't know if that's exactly it, but it's a very narrow range. It's 50 meters wide. The width of the lane is pretty much always the same. The kind of lane lines in nice pools are kind of always the same. That said, I mean, there was some level of difference in the energy of London versus the energy of Rio. One not bigger or smaller than the other, just different in some ways, hard to describe. And that made the experience unique, both from a preparation and then a celebratory standpoint. But really the competition, once the buzzer goes off and you're in the water, the difference between London, Glasgow, Singapore, Japan is negligible. But every triathlon course is just completely different. And even you mentioned the test event, the race that occurred on the day of the test event and the race that occurred at the Tokyo Paralympics were fundamentally different. Sure. Just the day, the course, the day, the weather, the water conditions, everything is so variable in triathlon, and it's not inconsequential. Like things like the water temp can really play in. And one thing I was really excited about Tokyo was, as a swimmer by background, the wetsuit, wearing a wetsuit's it's not an advantage for me. Not wearing a wetsuit is a huge advantage. So I was excited about taking the variable of a wetsuit out of play. Something like short transition areas really played to our advantage and things like that. So we were really excited about that Tokyo course. But more to your question, I really think that's one of the things I love about triathlon is that, this season we raced 3 times, Leeds, four times, Leeds, LA, Wisconsin, and Tokyo. And every race was completely different. And I love that. I love that the challenge is for every athlete to do as much preparation as physically possible, both from a fitness standpoint, but from a tactics standpoint and techniques. But then to our previous conversation, you have to be flexible on game day. Things are going to be weird. The water chop's going to be higher or lower. The water might be warmer. The turn buoy might be off. A big variable in Tokyo we were all worried about was the ramps coming out of the water. Apparently those ramps change quite a bit with the tides. So you might have like going up a mountain ramp, or you might have a flat ramp. You just don't really know exactly until game day. And we got kind of lucky in that regard. But again, it's just an example of all the things that can change from moment to moment.
Yeah.
And I love that about triathlon. I absolutely love that about triathlon.
And was that half the thing after Rio then? Like, was that part of that, right? It's a new challenge, and it's, it's more than just switching to a new sport. It's everything that comes with the triathlon.
Yeah, go back to the gift that keeps on giving. I think looking back on when I was getting into triathlon in 2017, I really didn't fully grasp or understand the level of complexity involved. I kind of came in thinking, oh, I'm a really good Paralympic swimmer. I've got that on the lock. Now I just need to figure out how to bike and run, and I'm all good. But camp number one, like day one, the coaches were setting up a transition practice, like a full hour and a half dedicated to transitions. And I looked at the schedule and thought, boy, what a waste of time. Like, let's just get to biking, get to running. And I was really quickly astounded at the level of complexity that can emerge just in getting out of the water and onto a bike. Like it's complicated, especially when you add a tandem bike in there and you've got clipped in shoes and helmets and glasses and all that stuff. It seems relatively obvious, but when you try to do it at full speed, a lot of things can come undone. And so I've loved all of that nuance. And it's been a long journey over 5 years. It's taken me until really like the last 2 months for some of those things to fall into place. And that's kind of what made me want to keep racing. I kind of had in my mind prior to this season that Tokyo might be the last go of trying to be a Paralympian, but really kind of after seeing everything fall into place over the last 2 months, from a technique standpoint, I thought, well, I really got to keep at this, because there's still a lot of time to save on that course. There's a lot of skills to do better, whether it's at the mount line or the dismount line or just with overall fitness. There's still a lot of things to do better. And that's what's been so gratifying about triathlon. No matter how well you do, there's always a way to do something better, which is awesome.
And of the people on that, of the men sharing that start line with you, you almost had less actual kind of international race experience than many. I mean, just looking back through your results, the first one was 2018, and you did was it Florida and then Yokohama pretty quickly after. So and then obviously the pandemic hit and so on. So like you said, so 2017 you took it. Was that part of a process where it was like, right, we're going to do some camps and we're going to see how this transition, as in from sport to sport, goes, and that was almost like nailing those things like transition and seeing how the bike and the run were going to go and working with a guide and all of that, and then as far as the pandemic went and not being able to race, there was there's a lot of athletes that have seen that as a good time to focus on various parts of things that they necessarily felt that they perhaps didn't have time in the course of a normal season. But you hadn't been doing the sport for all that long, so what were you did that throw you off more than help you like it had some people? Or there's a lot of questions there, sorry.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You're 100% right. I was pretty it's a difficult set of emotions in March of 20, right? All of us had big plans for the year, and all that got derailed. And that was amidst a situation where we were all very afraid. I remember being very afraid for my mom, and very afraid for our local community, for my extended family, for my wife's extended family, for our community in general. So it felt, on one hand, I was really frustrated with my own athletic career and my goals and ambitions. But then also on the other hand, I felt really sort of like guilty and mad at myself for feeling frustrated about my career when, our global community was facing this kind of really lethal threat that none of us had really known or understand it for so long. And it was just a really weird time to trying to wrap our head around. But dialing in on my frustration is like 2020 was really kind of supposed to be a breakout season for me. You pointed out, like, I started in 18. 17 was definitely just like hey, let me get a bike and let me meet a guide and let me figure out how this works logistically, getting from one place to another, and let me just know and understand how to even do the swimming tether thing. And I didn't have a wetsuit at the time, like just kind of put all that together. Then like actually start racing in 2018. 2019 start like ideally racing not terribly. By 2020, I felt like, all right, this season I'm actually going to go out. We're going to race well. We're going to threaten for some podiums. We're going to get some points, and we're really going to set up making the team and hopefully making a podium push for Tokyo. But then we didn't get the race at all. So it's like, not only did we not get the race experience, but I'd worked for an entire off season to sort of break out and really start racing well. And that got taken away. And not only that, but I had on the horizon that I wanted to start this PhD program. For me, I know I can't be an athlete forever. So I've kind of had in the back of my mind, like, what do I want my vocation to be? What am I going to do when sports is over? And I want to be a teacher. So I needed to start this program. I actually committed to starting the program in the fall of 20, kind of understanding that Tokyo would come and go and I'd be able to focus on school. And I originally told my wife, I don't think I can do Tokyo. I have to back out now because I have to focus on school. And she's been a really incredible support mechanism for me. And she kind of talked me through that and said, no, we can and we will make it all work. So we built a gym in the garage, and we've been training our butts off in my garage for the last year to kind of keep all these balls in the air. And throughout that entire process was a lot of doubt as to whether this was all going to work out. And so I know that there were athletes who were able to say, like, flip the perspective and say, let's use this as a time period to like work on a week area. For us, it was really kind of like, can I stick with this? Can I make this work? And it was really hard, especially fall of 2020, trying to do school and training at the same time. It was really, really, really difficult. But again, I give my wife all the credit in the world for just kind of like really sticking in it and really being a support mechanism that I needed throughout that off season. And it ended up being a major advantage. Just kind of successively training for that long without really racing. I hit the race circuit this year and understood a fitness that I had never really been able to test on the race course. And then lastly, partnering with Greg in the last couple months, he's helped me kind of make a few small tweaks that were able to kind of unlock some wattage on the bike that I had there, but wasn't really tapping into, and really dialing in on some techniques that helped us on the course in Tokyo. So it was kind of cool how it all came together right there at the very end.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how long you had been working with Greg. Obviously, you presumably don't get to entry level into the world of PTVI racing. You don't get to have an Olympian as a guide. So you have to earn a Greg Billington over some time. Yeah, so right. How did that come about? And who had you worked with previously? And just how that relationship evolves, I guess.
Yeah, so I owe a lot of credit to my first guide, Colin Riley, who really helped. He was at that first camp with me in 2017. He had worked with, the Aaron Scheides is the best VI triathlete in America and was that for quite a long time. And I'm sure Aaron's going to be back here before too long. But Aaron had kind of taught Colin how to guide. Colin then taught me how to be a VI athlete in triathlon, and we raced together for a number of years. But the caliber of guide is coming up and up and up. And if from the UK, you guys have watched Dave Ellis kind of grow into that, and him working with Tim Don and some others has really kind of made all of us else, kind of all the rest of the athletes in the VI category, look at where are there advantages to be gained, and how can we keep raising the caliber of our guides. And so I started talking with Greg at the beginning of this season, who also guided Aaron in a handful of races at the beginning of the season. And Aaron was going to go back with his guide, Ben, and Greg kind of wanted to stick in with it. And we decided to give it a go in Leeds. And the Leeds race was an interesting mix of things for us. It was a challenge getting a working bike to that race, which is a whole nother story. But Greg and I raced really well, but made a few mistakes that pushed us down into 6th and 7th. But what we were really excited about is some things went really well. We were really smooth in the water. We actually biked really well. We just did the wrong course and ended up adding a little bit, 90 seconds or so of extra biking that not everyone else had to do, which was fine. But we left the Leeds race thinking we have a lot of potential. And so we spent in between Leeds and I think Wisconsin, really dialing in on how to maximize our advantage as a team. And that came to fruition big time in Wisconsin. That was the first this is the first triathlon I won. I think that out of all these seasons, the first win I had. And I remember Greg kind of saying like, leading into the finish line, he was like, enjoy this, celebrate. And I was like, I don't know how to celebrate. I've not won a race before, so I don't know what to do. So in any case, I say all that to say, Greg and I kind of matured as a team throughout this season, tweak by tweak. But I think we found that there was a lot of natural chemistry between the two of us. We get along really well. We race really well together. We're the same size, which is really helpful in some ways, both with kind of like stroke cadence and sitting onto the bike and all that. And it's been really gratifying to sort of see that team sort of evolve from the Leeds race through the season into a world championship.
An Olympic championship. Yeah. I mean, he must have been very grateful to your wife's persuasive powers as well, then, for getting you, convincing you that Tokyo was the place to go. At what point did that go from being a doubt to being all in?
Well, I mean, from a training perspective, I've always I train all in, but I think I just started to, over the last year, I've been wrestling with those doubts as to whether I'd even make the team. And that persisted all the way through the Wisconsin starting line. Kyle Kuhn, my teammate, had an incredible race in Yokohama, winning the race in Yokohama. And then obviously we have a giant in our sport, Aaron Scheides, and we only have 2 spots. And so I was doing the mental math on that and thought, Kyle's on a tear and Aaron's a legend. There's not a space for me here. Really, it came down to, unless I win the Wisconsin race, I'm not going to make the team. And I had never won a race before, so I had no reason to believe that was even really possible. But, you said, I train all in, I race all in. So we were going to give it the best go we had. And, we executed on race day in Wisconsin, and that gave me that lit a fire that I didn't know was there necessarily. And really kind of started there and grew from there. And I thought I was really just going to be happy to make it to the Tokyo Games, period. I think winning Wisconsin and coming across the line with Greg, I think we looked at each other and I think we looked at the splits and we said, we have a chance of medaling. And then as we started doing the preparation in Hawaii, I think we really started to believe like we have a chance of winning. We knew it was going to be, a lot of things have to go right for us to be in that spot. But we thought, why not race with that in mind? Why not race and think that we can beat Dave? And why not race and think that we can beat Hector from Spain? And that's how we did. And I feel, it begs acknowledgement that Dave had broke his chain, and that really kind of sucks for everyone. I think, it's nobody wants that, and everyone wants the right race. But I like to think that Dave would have been mowing us down on that run course, and we would have really had a great battle there at the end. So we'll have to wait for that now. We'll have to wait for, either another race down the line or maybe the Paris Games to see, how that unfolds in a different course.
Quite. Well, and, you still had a great champion in Hector and obviously Kyle and plenty of others kind of chasing you down as well. So there's no
that's right. Yeah.
There's no taking away from any of that.
Yeah.
And to have all those elements that you've talked about kind of come together, for anyone to ever win a triathlon, so many elements have to come together. And for the VI athletes, it's like it's augmented up another notch, isn't it? So like that coming together of the two of you at that finish line and knowing that it has all happened with the gold is I can only imagine like for how that is for personal joy, but also from between the two of you.
Yeah, there's a couple layers there. One, especially after all the doubt of not even thinking we'd make the team, to then kind of coming down the finishing chute with a minute gap. That's incredible. Going back to what you said at the beginning, like I don't think that I've still figured all of that out, or I've not really fully like absorbed it all. And every time I kind of tell the story, I reimagine it and it gets smiley all over again. But a fun part of it too was doing it all with Greg. I think, Greg retired and left the sport behind after 2016. And he's in incredible shape. He's been doing marathons, he's been winning marathons and all that sort of stuff. But I think he came back into the sport hesitant is not the right word, but he came into the sport sort of maybe with some armor up or something. And then from race to race, it became more fun. I think he like opened back up into his old self and really got intense about it and opened up to the possibility of taking some risks and really wanting to do well and succeed and get excited and dream and all that sort of stuff. And it built race to race. Leeds was like, it was fun, but we can do better. And then Wisconsin was like, holy cow, we won. Like, what else can we do? And then, kind of working that through, race to race, workout to workout, and then kind of like having that all come to fruition. It was just really incredible. And like being a part of a tandem, a pair, as opposed to an individual, is like that energy gets, bounced back and forth between us at the finish line. Like, holy cow, we did it. Like, yeah, man, we did it. Holy cow, can you believe that? No, I can't. That's incredible. Like, that's not something you do in swimming. Like in swimming, it's like you come across the finish line. It's like, cool. It's sort of your thing. And, I high five my coach and all that, but it's a little bit different. Being able to sort of just kind of enjoy that moment with Greg makes it just far more sweeter, I think.
Yeah. And for him coming back to the sport that he obviously spent so much time in, and for you moving from one sport to the next, I mean, did you find it a very welcoming sort of atmosphere, whether it was kind of out on the course or whatever, did it feel kind of pretty natural pretty quickly for you to become a triathlete?
Well, in some senses, yes. The triathlon community is amazing. And from day one, camp one, our team really embraced me as one of theirs. And I've said this a bunch of times. I've been on a lot of teams over the years, going back to my age group swimming days through collegiate swimming and being on military teams and stuff. The Team USA Paratriathlon team in Tokyo stands out. It's one of the best teams I've ever been a part of. It's just a remarkable group of individuals who are all very dedicated to their craft, but very warm and embracing of each other and supportive of each other. It was really an incredible experience. So yeah, not just the Tokyo team, but triathlon in general. One of our preparation races was the LA, our national championships out in Long Beach. And that's a really cool race because you get a lot of elite triathletes, a lot of elite pro triathletes. And then like, it's also a development race to some extent where we get a lot of like newcomers in that race and we're all racing together. There's the feeling of community is really high at that race. And you do feel like not only a part of an elite team, but a part of a broad community that spans across our entire nation and across the entire world of people who are, more inclined to wake up early on Saturday morning and go do an hour, 2 hour, 4 hour long race or workout than anything else. And that's just it's a really cool group of people and they're all very supportive of each other. I love being a part of the triathlon community. That said, it's taken me a long time to feel like I'm a triathlete. Going back to 2017 and kind of thinking like, oh, I just got to figure out how to bike and run and I've got this on lock. Then being shocked about all of the different nuances and all the different techniques and all the different bike parts and ways to make your bike a little bit faster or a little bit different, or what's an aero position and what's a disc wheel and what are disc brakes and all of this stuff that you have to learn along the way. I just felt race to race for a long time that I'm a newbie and I know nothing. And I couldn't really escape that because every race I would make some kind of bonehead mistake and feel like, man, I'm back to being a newbie again. Really only in the last 2 seasons or so have I started to feel like, yeah, I'm a triathlete and I'm a big part of this. And I'm really excited to be a big part of this. And that's been a cool transition for sure.
And that's what gets people hooked on triathlon, I think, isn't it? Those little bits and those, there's always just something else kind of crumbing out of the woodwork and like, oh, okay, I need to get on.
Yeah, and people stick with it for decades because there's always something to tweak, whether it's on your bike or your shoes or your tether or whatever else. There's like something always to tweak or do a little bit differently or whatever. I think that's cool.
And for you, so your accident came in 2011, serving for the US military, and you go to hospital. You're lying in hospital. Like from that, and literally a year later, you were on the Paralympic start line. That in itself is obviously, it's an incredible journey and so on. But from like how quickly from lying in the hospital bed did sport become what you were going to focus on? was there, because presumably the emotions are up and down, and you could have gone on to become purely academic, that's obviously a huge part of your life as well, or you totally reassess everything about your life, I can only imagine, in that situation. So the transition to becoming a sportsman, and it's obviously a big part of the Naval Academy as well, right? You're a swimmer there. So did the pool just become even more your kind of sanctuary for the rehabilitation, and something to just really sink your teeth into?
Yeah, you're spot on. You asked really insightful questions. These are outstanding. I think, to your point, sports was a big part of my identity, not only just kind of growing up as an age group swimmer, but sports is a big part of both the Naval Academy and the military culture, sports and fitness, really. And as far as how quickly did sports become something to focus on, that's a harder question to answer. It became a part of my life really quickly. Really, what I remember about coming into having an injury like mine, for me, my personal experience was that of, I'm very grateful to still be alive. For me, I got really close, really within inches. If the blast had hit me a different way, if I had stepped on it a different way, or if things hadn't gone the way that they had on the battlefield, I very likely could have lost my life or been way worse off. And in fact, after the blast, I thought that I had died. I really, in my mind, I really was convinced that I had died. And I kind of accepted that in a way where I had reconciled my life and thought I did a good job, and I'm proud of the life that I lived, and I'm ready to pass on. But I didn't. I came back. And I came back to a hospital, and I came back without vision, but I didn't really recognize those facts quite as astutely as everybody else did, as quickly as they did. So I was coming from this place of, man, I can't believe I'm still alive. Isn't that great news? But everybody else around me was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's blind. And I don't know what that's going to be like. And I'm afraid of that. And I'm worried about that. And I'm sorry. And I'm sad about blindness. And people they kept hugging me and crying and telling me how sad they were that I would be blind. And in my mind, I was like, that's such an odd, I'm not worried about that. I'm not afraid of that. I don't want people to pity me. I don't want people to worry about me. I don't want people to think I'm incapable in any way, shape, or form. I need to start showing everybody that blindness isn't going to get me down. I'm going to be fine. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. And I said that a bunch of times, and I felt like it kind of didn't really have as much of an impact. And so I was kind of on a mission to get back to a high function as quickly as possible. But obviously blindness poses some significant challenges. It's hard to find food on your plate. It's hard to pick out your outfit in the morning. It's definitely hard to get from point A to point B if you can't see where you're going. So I needed something to show people that I was gonna, thrive in a sense. And sports was a way to do that. With minor adaptations in the pool, I could start swimming, and I could start swimming fast, and I could start swimming well. And that was something I could use as a mechanism to show everyone, look, I'm fine. I'm still the same me that me. I'm still a swimmer. I'm still a good swimmer. I still enjoy swimming. And I'm now going to use swimming as a platform to translate those lessons and that sort of feeling of vitality into the other aspects of my life that I'm just now learning how to adapt. That kind of carried me through for a while. And that was what was more important to me than anything else. And then it kind of took on a life of its own. Well, someone said, well, you went to swim practice. What about going to a meet? And oh, by the way, did you know that there's this Paralympic thing? There's blind athletes who compete in swimming. Oh, that's neat. Do you realize how lucky you are to be injured in a Paralympic year? Someone said. And I thought, what an incredible perspective of somebody. No, I didn't realize how lucky I am. Let's give this a go. And then there was sort of a sense of urgency. I needed to get into racing by February of 2012 to be eligible. And I actually hadn't left the hospital completely yet. So I was actually leaving the hospital to go train at the local YMCA every day or every other day for lunch. And then I went to a meet, and it kind of just became this, if you want to do this thing, you have to go to this race. If you want to be on the national team, you have to get this cut. It sort of just one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. And before I really realized it, I'm at the Paralympic trials. And then I've earned a spot on the team. And I remember that was kind of a moment where I was like, holy cow, this is cool. I remember this. They gave me a ball cap that said, Team USA London team or something like that. I'm holding this ball cap in my hand thinking, holy cow, this is something I would have fallen over for when I was an able-bodied athlete growing up. Like I watched the Olympics every year, and I would train with a guy who was trying to make the team. And I was all about, I had the Olympic trial cut written in my ball cap when I was 11 years old, thinking one day I'd go to the Olympics. I obviously didn't go to the Olympics, but to be holding that Team USA ball cap in my hand, 20 years later was just really a surreal experience. So I think, honestly, out of that whole loop, I was probably the last one to kind of get on board with this, like, Paralympics is the way for me, and sports is a big part of my life. It was just kind of something that more or less happened. And then only in London and then after London did I start to really understand that Paralympics was going to be a big core component of who I would be moving forward.
And that, obviously, it's a natural response for people to want to hug you and be crying and say they're sorry about your blindness. The person that said, "Oh, you're actually very lucky because it's a Paralympic year," like that, is that person still in your life? Like that seems like the person that would stand out massively, and perhaps
yeah, that person's a really remarkable individual. His name's Rich Cardillo. He was a U.S. Army colonel, serving in the war on terror in a number of ways. He got out of the military and he had a job at the U.S. Association for Blind Athletes. They're just a group that puts money and resources towards blind programs like goalball and gets tandem bikes in the hands of those who are visually impaired. And his job back then was kind of like that. He was called the military outreach coordinator. His job was to look for military veterans or injured vets who were either becoming blind or were blind as a result of war wounds or ailments or whatever else, and try to get them involved in sports. And he called me a bunch of times, and he was the one who said, "Yeah, I can fly you to this meet. And do you realize how lucky you are to be injured in a Paralympic year? This could happen." And I think his enthusiasm was kind of put a seed in my head of like, how exciting could this be? And he texts me every so often. I actually owe him a phone call, but he's been obviously a big part of this crazy journey we're on.
Yeah, there must be so many people who served and had accidents, 30, 40, 50 years ago that, just something like this would have been so good for them and just didn't exist back then, right?
Yeah, I think in various forms. What's cool about the Paralympics in general, though, is the Paralympic history goes back to the UK, the Stoke Mandeville Games, which was for wounded vets after World War II, or I think during and then after World War II. So the notion of a Paralympic competition being cathartic for the wounded vet is really core to the Paralympic movement, which I'm very proud of. But you're right, there are a lot of military veterans all over in the UK, in Canada, here, Australia, folks who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, in Africa, who have encumbered significant wounds, either visible or invisible, and who have not been provided sports as an opportunity to sort of work through those things. And there's a lot of us who have, me, Melissa Stockwell, Eric McElvaney, who have, really been able to turn that into something big. And that's awesome. And I think, I don't want to speak for everyone in the wounded vet community, but, a big part of my motivation in doing this is to really kind of put that out there as an option, put this out there as something that is really an important part of our society. It's really important part of the warrior's journey as well. Is, this is a way to help you kind of work through all of that stuff, whether it's PTS or a physical ailment. Sports is really powerful as a way of catharsis. And that's something that not everyone needs to go to the Paralympics and win gold medals, because then, I would be out of a job. But, if sport at any level is really cathartic in that way.
And just for, anyone listening who doesn't know, your role in the military was very specialist. It was render safe unexploded devices.
Yep.
A very specialist area, right? I mean, would there be kind of one of you per platoon or company, and you would kind of, when they go out on exercise, and you'd be out there? So presumably the majority of your military career, you were kind of clenched and tense about something like that happening, were you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. There were two of us with every assault platoon, whose job was to be kind of on standby in the case that anybody really encountered an explosive hazard, whether that was an unexploded bomb, something that's, either a US or other aircraft had dropped that didn't detonate, or an insurgent device that was either implanted or about to be implanted, or a weapons cache or something along those lines, we're on standby for that sort of thing. And you're 100% right. We did a mission every other 3 days or so, every 3 days. And every time you step off of the helicopter, you kind of think, today could be my day. And at the time I was there in 2011, IEDs were a really cheap and effective way for the Taliban, who was very outnumbered and outmatched by ISAF, International Security Afghanistan Forces, or whatever that acronym stands for. They were very outmatched, so they could kind of, level the playing field by planting these bombs all over the place, which made it very difficult for anybody to do anything. And the really frustrating thing about that way of warfare to me is that it affects everybody. It affects the civilian populace. It affects whether you think however you determine good guys or bad guys, it affects all the guys on the battlefield. And it's an ugly way of going. Like, I wasn't the first guy I saw get blown up, and it's not a pleasant thing for anybody. And, kind of a frustrating experience. But you're right. Like, every time you step off the helicopter, you think today might be my day. And then you kind of get used to doing that mission every so often. And then I remember every time I got on the helicopter going home was like this immense feeling of relief. Like, I made it through. I made it another day, and I'm going to go home and, call my family and enjoy life as much as possible, because who knows what'll happen on the next mission.
Hence, you felt relief and blessed that you didn't lose your life, just your vision, if one of those goes off underneath you, obviously. But
exactly.
did the military door kind of close for you straight away then? Were there still other avenues that you could have presumably like stayed in the military, but just felt that was probably not for you anymore? Or
Yeah, again, great insightful question. The military did not close the door on me. And in fact, the military was incredibly supportive, not only like day one, week one, month one, supporting me and my family through a very difficult process of being in the hospital and in and out of surgery and all that. The military was incredibly supportive. And in kind of the broader military community, especially in the US, we have a lot of what we call VSOs, veteran support organizations, that are civilian, nonprofit organizations that fundraise and put resources to veterans. So we had a lot of support, all kinds of things throughout that time period, to make sure that not only the burden on me as a result of my injury, but the burden on my mom, my family, was all alleviated as much as could be possible. So we felt really supported there. And all along the way, my chain of command was very supportive of the idea, like, you don't have to leave the military. We can find a job for you. And I would continue to be a lieutenant, and I would earn a paycheck, and, so on and so forth. And then even what was made clear to me is, even when I would leave the active duty force, I would receive, disability benefits for life, essentially. Like, there was no real professional pressure on me to do anything other than what I wanted to do, what was going to be most fulfilling and satisfying for me personally. Right. I elected to leave because I spent all of my growing up wanting to be a naval officer. I spent all of my naval officership learning how to be an explosive ordnance disposal officer, how to serve with special operations forces, work with Green Berets, work with SEALs, work with Marines on really intense missions in the war on terror or otherwise. And nobody's going to let me do that job if I can't see, I can't shoot, I can't take bombs apart. How terrifying is that? The idea of a blind guy trying to figure out which wire to cut, the red wire or the green wire, right? So not going to be able to do that job. I wasn't interested. And I knew there's some other way for me to like maximize my capabilities and mitigate my disability. The military is not that. I will figure something out. To your point, I turned my attention. I originally thought I wanted to go get an MBA and find a corporate job. It took me a while to find academia as a much better place for me to be, where in academia, my blindness really doesn't factor in a whole lot. So long as I can find the right resources, I can teach, I can write, I can read, no problem. It doesn't really play into my professional life all that much, which I'm very gratified about. But anyway, yeah, I left the military on my own accord in 2013. Mm.
And having had that as your profession, then what might to some be a pretty disconcerting thing of going down a pool for the first time and not being able to see where the end is, or whether you're going left or right or whatever, is pretty small fry, I would imagine, is it? But still something pretty major to adapt to for what was already like a big part of your life. And, you know, being in the pool was...
People would ask, I thought this was really funny, like the first time, are you afraid? Like, are you afraid of swimming? I said, no, absolutely not. And they said, what about the start? Like, I think people looked at, I would get up on the block and I would jump into the pool, and they'd say, are you afraid to jump into the water? And I said, well, no. Like, what kind of messed up individual would say, take your mark and go into an empty pool? Like, I have some faith in humanity. You know what I'm saying?
Truth. Yeah. But for someone who, you know, had been through Naval Academy, been in the army, and I guess one of the hardest, the biggest things to come to terms with must have been that like the pace of life that you were used to, right? Where everything is kind of, you know, life and death decisions made really quickly, and then suddenly literally everything you want to do is somewhat dependent on someone else, or at least made that much harder that it's slowing you down getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know that I would have understood it in those terms back then, but you're right. I think I looked at it, I think, in terms of independence and autonomy. I used to be able to do so many things, jumping out of aircraft, scuba diving, shooting my weapon, blowing things up, preventing things from blowing up. And then very mundane, easy things became something I couldn't do. I couldn't order dog food off of Amazon. I couldn't wash the dishes without breaking a glass. I couldn't, sometimes I'd get lost in my own house. Those sorts of things. There was sort of this existential frustration with, this shouldn't be difficult for me, and it is. And that makes me so mad or upset or dissatisfied or discontent or frustrated, whatever your word. But you're 100% right. It was kind of like a pace of life thing. It was a capability thing. It was it's all, we talk a lot about identity these days, and really my identity, I was kind of in an identity vacuum after I left the service. I had spent so long kind of growing up with a certain vision of myself as this sort of naval officer, as a servant of my country, as a leader, all these things. And a lot of that got that kind of thrown into doubt really when I lost my vision. And I think that's really, in essence, the importance of sport. It gave me a platform or a mechanism or a means to start to kind of piece together that new identity. And while sports is a huge part of who I am now, it's not the entire thing. So when I leave behind sports, I won't face the same challenge. I've been kind of doing the same thing on the side with academia. Like, not only am I a triathlete, but I'm also a professor. And so when I leave triathlete behind, I'll become a professor. And when I leave professor behind, I'll be a husband, I'll be dad, I'll be whatever else. So I think it's important to sort of nurture all these different aspects of our identity, but I certainly wasn't that mature, or I didn't have all my ducks in a row back then. And there were some years, 2013, 2014, where I really had to do a lot of, what do they call it? Soul searching and things like that, and kind of putting those pieces in order.
And now, so you were straight back to studying after Tokyo. What do you have left of that? And it sounded like perhaps a part of you thought maybe Tokyo would have been your last dance, but now you've also kind of thinking Paris 2024. So where do you sit now, and in terms of where the PhD leaves your sporting ambitions going forwards, and vice versa?
Yeah. One of the things I always was attracted to about academia is that there is flexibility and there's space within this sort of professional endeavor to be an athlete as well. I mean, we expect the same of our students. We have students who are rugby players and triathletes and so on and so forth. So there's no reason that I can't do that and teach at the same time. It is difficult while I'm doing my coursework as a grad student. The amount of reading and courses and seminars that I have to do is pretty extensive right now, but I only have that for 2 more semesters. So I'm taking 4 credits this semester and then another 2 next semester. And then I take examinations in the spring, and then I'm essentially, I'm kind of in this no man's land where I have 3 years to put together a dissertation. During that time frame, the expectation is that I'm doing research, that I'm writing, I'm doing some teaching, but the focus should be putting together this dissertation that I will inevitably defend here in Princeton at the 4 or 5 year mark and then go to the job market and try to get a job as a professor somewhere. I'd love to get a job here or Annapolis or somewhere else. And that's the professional kind of landscape. You're right. I did kind of have in my head that Tokyo might be the last games, but Greg and I had such a great time and we achieved so much in the last 6 weeks that we really kind of felt like we couldn't leave it there. We really want to, for just the sake of enjoying racing together. It's not really a quest for gold as it is just a desire to continue to compete. I feel like a couple things. One, personally, I feel like there's a lot to be improved upon. Greg and I have only been racing one season. We thought, man, if we were able to achieve that in one season, what could we do with a couple more? Two, I don't feel like we were racing on the right bike. And honestly, Greg and I are kind of on a mission to make tandem biking as cool as possible, because there's really just not, especially relative to those who ride single bikes, there's not as many fast racing style tandems out there in the market. There's not a lot of bike companies that are making them. Specialized, as big of a company as Specialized is, doesn't even make a tandem. Neither does Cannondale, neither does Trek. And that's crazy to me. Like these giant bike companies, they don't even make a tandem bike. So we are kind of on a mission to make tandeming as cool as possible. We're going to try to build a real fast bike for the two of us and then just take it race by race. I mean, we talked about it. Every race is different. Every race has advantages or disadvantages or things that might pose, go well for us, might be challenging for us. There's cobblestones, there's mountains, there's lakes, there's oceans, there's rivers, there's all kinds of fun stuff to get out there and race on. And I think Greg and I are just really excited to take it as it comes. The idea of racing in Paris, I think, excites both of us. I've only been to France a handful of times, but I've watched the tour every year. The idea of maybe a triathlon down the Champs-Élysées sounds really cool to me. So let's see how that shapes out. And then this is not me committing to anything, but there's this looming thing for us as Americans that it's out there a number of years away, but it's really hard to turn down, this idea of maybe competing in a Paralympics on home soil. And I know that's something that just really gets at the heart of every athlete. And it's a far way away, but maybe it's not that far. And maybe Greg and I could kind of hang up our hats or hang up our helmets in Paralympic competition on home soil. That would be super cool for the LA Games. But like I said, I just want to take it one race at a time.
Yeah. What a way to go out that would be, indeed. And I suppose to an outsider, the idea, the idea of being able to train and study or write your dissertation at the same time, it feels like there could be a nice sweet spot there, right? You're kind of working in the morning, go out, do some training, come back, clear head, back to the desk. It all sounds so easy.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, that's my fantasy. That's when I sketch it out there. I'm like, how hard could it possibly be?
That fresh air, good for the brain.
Exactly.
Great. Well, Brad, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thanks very much for taking the time. And I know you got a lot on today as well. So we should let you get to your Thursday. But it's been fascinating. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, back to reading about ancient Greece and then the afternoon is sociology of organization. So a busy day for sure.
Oh, what a coincidence! Me too. Great. All right. Well, congratulations again on a brilliant Paralympics, and look forward to the next stage.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. Just give me a ring anytime. I'd love to chat.
Brilliant. Cheers.